So our next topic, I hope you gone through the video once again for the networking. If you have any doubts or even if you don't have any doubt also, I would recommend you if you are new to networking, watch those videos once again. It would be extremely helpful. All right. So yeah. So the next thing we want to discuss is can you mute yourself, everyone? Deba, you are on mute. So the next topic that we are going to discuss is DNS, right? Domain name system is what the full form of DNS. So I told you already, right? When you browse for a name over the internet, only IPs are routable. You cannot route a name. Only IPs are routable. So when you browse for google.com, you are still able to see the pages of Google. What happens is first your computer, assume this is your computer will ask a DNS system of Google what is the IP address of google.com. Then this DNS system will respond with the IP address of Google, and then your laptop will connect to that machine. Probably this is the machine owned by Google, and they are running Apache or some web server in it. And when the request come here, the pages would be given back to you. That is when you see the page displayed in your browser. This is actually what happens when you browse for a name. If you browse using an IP address, we put the EC2 machine IP address in your browser. This DNS system is not required because you are browsing IP address, which means it is directly routable on the internet. It will not go to any DNS system. It will directly connect to the remote machine, get the page from the remote machine. But if anybody in the world they need to browse using a name, there must be a DNS system that tell him that this is the IP address that you need to contact if you want to get the pages of this particular domain name. So today we are going to discuss about this box, what happens inside here, how this name resolution works. Basically, what this DNS server do is it converts the name to the IP address. That's what the DNS system will do. It convert the name to an IP. It can do the reverse also, IP to name, but that is not used for these kind of purposes. That is used for some different purpose. This is the part that we are going to discuss. Okay, so let's take a look at this box. What happens inside this DNS box? Actually, think about this. You want to browse for google.com, flipkart.com, microsoft.com, like that. There are many websites in the world. So you need to use these names to browse them. Not just you, people on different parts of the world want to browse it. So whenever such kind of browsing happens, this is you on your computer. You are browsing for any website. What happens is every website will have a set of name servers. Every website in the world must have a set of name server. In this name server, they have the information. What is the IP address of the particular website? For example, this is Google. Google will have a set of name server, and inside this name server, Google will add some records saying that google.com points to this particular IP address. And these are the name server which are responsible for telling the world that this is the IP address of Google. Anybody request for google.com, all their requests end up coming into this name server, and they will get this IP address information from this name server, and they will contact to the right machine which has this IP. So once you got the IP, then you can connect to the machine directly, right? That you figured it out by now. So for every website in the world, for every website which are working, there must be a name server for that particular websites. You can either purchase the name server from a third party, or it is also possible that you can set up the name server of your own. Whatever, once you did that, you need to publish this name server to the world. I mean, this name server would become the authoritative name service of your website. For example, google.com. Assume these are the authoritative name service of google.com. They are owned by Google, and inside this name server, the name server know google.com points to this particular IP. So people from all over the world, when they browse for google.com website, all their requests will end up coming into this name server, asking this name server what is the IP address of google.com. The name server will respond with the right IP. Then you will contact to that machine and get the web page from there. Okay, right. So one more question. This is you in your home. How do you know what are the name servers of Google? There are millions of websites out there in the world. Every website will have their own authoritative name servers. How can you know what are name servers of Google? Or you want to browse for Flipkart, how do you know the name servers of Flipkart? So you want to browse for many different websites, and you are, anyway you are working, I mean, you are getting some IP address from the respective authoritative name server, and then you are connecting to the correct machine, then you are getting the web pages. It's working. But how does your machine know which name servers to contact? Right, for google.com, it should be the authoritative name server of google.com you need to contact. For flipkart.com, this could be the name servers of Flipkart, so you need to contact these machines. So every website in the world will have a set of name servers. So I'll tell you how that works. When you got your internet connection, assume this is you on your laptop, and you already have an internet connection from your ISP. What your ISP did is, they had given you a set of name server. These name servers are responsible for finding out which name server you need to contact. For example, you are browsing for flipkart.com. Whatever website you are browsing for, the first request will always come to the name server that is given to you by your ISP. Then these are the name server which are responsible for finding out what are the authoritative name servers of the particular website which you are browsing right now. So the request will finally come to the authoritative name server, and authoritative name server will respond the IP address information to the local name server, or you call it resolver name service. And the resolver name server will then give the IP address to the user. Or sometimes what resolver name server will also do is, it will save that IP address in the cache. So next time when you browse for google.com, you first ask the resolver name server what is the IP address of google.com. The resolver name server will have that IP in the cache. It would be given to you. So this entire query does not need to be completed, because name server already cached google.com IP. There is no need to query this authoritative name server again for the IP address of Google. So the responsibility of resolver name server is finding out which names authoritative name server to contact. For example, google.com, there is a set of authoritative name server. Yahoo.com, microsoft.com, flipkart.com, any website which you are browsing, every website will have different set of name servers, authoritative name server. It's mandatory that if you want to register your own website, you also must have a set of authoritative name servers, at least one. Then you can add which IP address you want your to point your website to inside this authoritative name server. Then you can publish this authoritative name server, so that everyone will contact to this name server whenever they want to browse for your website, which we will come to that. I mean, right. For now, we will see how the DNS works over the internet. All right. So one more question: how does this resolver name server do this? I mean, how does this resolver name server find out which name server to contact? We will come to that. So now you know how it works, right? Whenever you get a connection from your ISP, most probably they would provide you a set of name surveys. These are called resolver name surveys. So whenever you browse for any website, first your query will go to this resolver name server, and this resolver name server is responsible for finding out which authoritative name server to contact to get the correct IP address. Fine. So any website which you browse, first your query will come to the resolver name server, which also has a cache. Okay. Great. So how does the resolver name server find out the IP address of any website, or it need to find out what are the authoritative name server of any website? So before that, I will show you one thing. If you want to see the IP address of Google, there is a Linux command, or in Windows also this command will work. NSLOOKUP. Run this command NSLOOKUP google.com. You will get the IP address of google.com. www.google.com. Maybe you would see a different IP. Possible. Yeah, it is a different IP. You want to know the IP address of flipkart.com. So there's a command nslookup. This command works both in Windows as well as Linux. This command you can use to find out the IP address of any website. So when I browse for flipkart.com, www.flipkart.com, what actually happens is my laptop will connect to this IP address, right? 163.57. So it will connect to a machine that has this particular IP, then get the page from that machine. So you can actually find out the machine. You can simply run this command nslookup would actually show you what is the exact IP address you are connecting to. Okay, fine. Just for your information. And you know how you are getting this IP. First your query, first my query, I am running this command from my Mac. So first my query will connect to, I got the connection from Airtel. So Airtel name server are responsible for giving me this IP. Probably the Airtel name server will not have the IP address of Flipkart, www.flipkart.com. Then what this Airtel name server will do is, it will connect to the Flipkart name service and get the IP address of flipkart.com, and then it is given to me. Probably it would also cache that IP in its internal storage, right? Just making sure that you got it, because we are going to dig a little more deeper. So now let's think about this. Let's think about how this authoritative name server is, I mean the resolver name server or my Airtel name server will find out which name server give the record for www.flipkart.com. So before I discuss that, let's talk about a fully qualified domain name. If example of a fully qualified domain name is www.google.com. Dot. It actually ends with a dot. This is a fully qualified name. Any name that ends with a dot is called a fully qualified name. This is the even though you do not put dot in your browser, your actual fully qualified domain name of google.com is this on the DNS point of view. And one more thing that you need to remember, in the world there are 13 name surveys out there. This name server act as the name surveys of dot. Let's call dot the root, and there are 13 root name surveys out there in the world which are responsible for holding all the records related to dot. What could those records be? One example is com, Another example is org. Another example is .info. Info. Another example is net. Like that. Basically, it is nothing but this part of a fully qualified domain name. So it can be com, it can be .net, it can be .info, .org, .gov, .co.in. Like that, there are different high level domain names. And basically, these 13 name server which I told you over there on the internet, right? This is how the DNS system on internet is set up. There are 13 name server out there in different places, which I don't know. These name server know the name surveys of com, org, etc. Okay. And for example, take a look at this com name server. There can be a number of com name surveys. There can be a lot of com name surveys. These are the name surveys of com. They will know what are the name surveys of google.com, yahoo.com, microsoft.com, flipkart.com. So any website that end with .com, what are their name server, those information this name server will have, the com name server will have. So it's like a hierarchy. This is how the flow is over the internet. So I will tell you how your resolver name server will work. What the resolver name server will do to get the IP address of www.google.com. So assume this is your resolver name server, which is very near to you, right? Whenever you browse for any website, your request will go into the resolver name server. It will ask for what is the IP address of www.google.com, and assume that there is no, the resolver name server does not know the IP address of www.google.com. What resolver name server will do first is it will contact one of these 13 root name surveys. It will ask this name server what is the IP address of google.com, www.google.com. So what this one of these 13 name server, it can contact any name server, doesn't matter. There are 13. So probably your request will end up hitting one of the 13 machines, any machines. And all machines will have the com, org, biz, co.in, all this information. So first I will request this one of this name server, what is the IP address of www.google.com. What this name server will tell me? It will tell me, no, I don't have the IP address of www.google.com, but I know the name surveys of com. That information I have. I will give that information to you. So name surveys of com is given to my resolver name server. All right, now the resolver name server got whom to contact for com information. Then the resolver name server will ask one of the com name server. There can be multiple com name server that your resolver uh, com will have multiple name servers. So the resolver name server will next ask one of this com name server, what is the IP address of google.com. Com name server will say, no, I don't know the IP address of www.google.com, but I know the name surveys of google.com, right? Any website that come under com, that name server information, this com name server will have. So the name server of google.com would be given to your resolver name server. Fine. And finally, now you got the name surveys of google.com, which are nothing but the authority name surveys of google.com. Then the resolver name server will contact the authoritative name server of google.com. There can be again multiple name surveys. One of these name server will be asked by resolver name server, what is the IP address of www.google.com or simply google.com IP. Then these are the authoritative name servers of Google. Then this name server will have whatever information Google want to publish to the world. So assuming the IP address is already put in the side these name surveys, the authoritative name server, the name server will respond, yes, I have the IP address of www.google.com. This is the IP address, and I can find this information because there is a record for www. In this machine, and that IP address is given to you. Now, finally, you got the IP address of www.google.com. Then, what the resolver name server will give you is, before it gives you this IP address, it would also do some caching, right? The IP address, once it got it, it would do this caching in its internal storage or internal memory, and then it would give you the IP address to, I mean, it will give the IP address to you. Now you will connect to the correct machine which has this IP, probably your EC2 machine. It will connect to EC2 machine where Apache is listening on port 80, and Apache will respond with the WordPress pages or whatever to you. That is when you see the web page displayed in your browser. Each time you access any website in your browser, these are the backend thing which actually happens. These many things happens in the background until you get the web page from the google.com server. Dinesh, that is a different thing. On the DNS point of view, google.com is a different domain name. Google.co.in is different, right? From the DNS point of view, every domains are different. Even though both google.com and google.co.in are owned by same company, they are different domains. Okay, just for your information. All right, so can you find out what is the IP which are your resolver name server? You can actually, if you go to the adapter settings, if you go on your Windows machine, if you go to the adapter settings, uh, go to the what is that? Network connections. Go to the network connections, then click on change adapter settings. Over there, you can see the list of adapters. Double click on the adapter through which you are connected to internet. Then you would see some option, select IPv4 properties. There you can see your name surveys. Most of the time the name surveys are dynamically given to you by your modem device, right? You have a modem. Whenever you are connected to internet, the modem device would actually automatically give you some DNS server IP, or if you want, you can actually set your own resolver name server. Actually, these resolver name surveys are something that you can set up of your own if you want, right? If you want, in your home, you believe that you don't want to use the name surveys of your ISP, instead you want to use the name servers of your own, you can actually set up a name server of your own. Then you can, inside your laptop, you can specify, instead of connecting to this name server, I need to connect to the given name server. You can provide the IP address of your name server from your network settings page in Windows. And then those resolver name server will take care of the rest, resolving the domain name to a specific IP. And there is one command in Linux. If you run this command in your EC2 machine, dig. There's a command called dig google.com. Run this command, it would give you the IP address of google.com. Okay. And where did I get this IP of google.com? Basically, google.com has authoritative name server. If you want to register basil.com or your own website, you must have a set of authoritative name server. This authoritative name server tells the world that this is the IP of google.com. So probably for Google also there are a set of name server where Google would actually set up this domain name uh, using an A record. google.com points google.com website to this given IP. So anybody who is browsing for google.com, they end up asking this name server what is the IP address of google.com. This name server will respond with this IP that you see right here. Then I am actually connecting to that machine with that IP. Assume this is your EC2 machine, right? Which has Apache running and WordPress installed. Then the machine, if you configure the website already, basil.com, then the machine will respond with the web pages of basil.com. This is how DNS works in the world. Thus, each system will have only one resolver name server. There can be multiple. There can be multiple name server. Generally, there would be two, because in case one name server is not working, other name server will take the control. So even resolver name server as well as authority name server, both of them, it's good to have more than one, right? If there is only one, there's a risk. Okay, so what I wanted to discuss next, it's clear, right? Any questions? It's a sure interview question. It's a definite interview questions, and not just interview. It's very very important that you understand these concepts when you start working. Actually, if there is any problem, how you will troubleshoot it, it depends on, right? Depends on this. Any questions? Anyone?
Asil, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you have up till now I can understand the concept. You are explaining me the concept of IP addressing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually,
So
resolving names to IP address.
resolving names to IP address, right? So basically, it's up to the resolver name server how it provides the IP of google.com. Am I right?
Exactly.
Right. And from an identity name server have the IP address name for the google.com,
Right.
right? Okay. And it's interfacing with the EC2 machine, which is the Linux machine. Am I right?
EC2 machine was just an example. In case of Google, maybe they are not using EC2 machines. Definitely, they will have their own machine. So
So
EC2 machine,
I just wanted to know that I am on the right track and I am explaining you in terms of correct terms. Am I right?
right? EC2 machine
Right.
is where you will have your web pages, the WordPress files.
Okay. Okay. So today we have the topic of domain network system, right? And in domain network system, we are studying the resolver name server, right? We
Right, resolver name server and authoritative name server, and how the DNS
identity.
resolution work. Correct.
How and how is the what?
DNS resolution, how the DNS resolution works.
DNS resolution.
I mean, when you browse for a website, how the name convert to IP.
Okay.
Now you have an idea.
When you need. Okay.
Okay. The reason why it is important is when you work in real time, a lot of issues can come across. Uh, Maybe your website is not working and you found that you are not getting the IP. You try to run the dig command and you found that you are not getting the IP address of the particular website. The then you can easily predict that there is something wrong with the DNS system. Then you want to troubleshoot whether the problem is with your resolver name server or if the problem is with your authority name server of the website, right? So those kind of troubleshooting you can do by using this command. I would show you. That's what I was wanted to show you next. Let me
Excuse me,
go.
sir, can I?
Yeah,
So we are right now doing the troubleshooting.
right. I mean, I will just show you how
Okay.
the exact DNS resolution works.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So run this command: dig plus trace google.com, www.google.com. So what I'm trying to do here is, and always remember, google.com is the domain name. Google.com, Flipkart.com. Forget about www. It is nothing. It is just a subdomain of Google. Mail.google.com, www.google.com. All right. Calendar.google.com, contacts.google.com. So dot is something. It's not a actual domain. It's a subdomain. If you have this real domain, then you can create any number of subdomains. There is no need for you to register subdomains. You can register only one domain, google.com. Then you can have thousands of subdomains with you, which is absolutely free. So google.com is a domain, yahoo.com is a domain. Only those things will have name surveys, right? google.com has google.com has authoritative name server. This authoritative name server will have the IP address of google.com. It will have the IP address of www.google.com. It will have the IP address of mail.google.com. So any subdomain of that name, this name server will have the IP address. Just make a note. Only google.com is the registered domain, or flipkart.com is the registered domain, uh, not payment.flipkart.com. This is just a subdomain. If you have flipkart.com domain, you are allowed to create n number of subdomains. So only thing is that in your authoritative name server, you need to add the record for each of your name servers. I mean, each of your subdomains. www.google.com points to this IP. Google.com points to this IP. Mail.google.com points to this IP. So all this information would be there inside this set of name servers, the authoritative name server. So if you browse for google.com, if you browse for www.google.com, mail.google.com, whatever names you are browsing for, these are the right authoritative name server to tell to you the actual IP address of these names, right? So not only google.com, all subdomains of google.com. Okay, fine. So I'm going to run this command: dig trace www.google.com. What this command is it same as dig, but it would, I'm also putting a plus trace to that command. What this command will do is it will connect you. I mean, the same way. First, your resolver name server, it will connect to the one of the 13 root level name server. The root level name server will give you the name service of com. Then you will contact the name service of com, and you will get the name service of google.com. You will contact the name service of google.com. You will get the IP address of google.com. So this complete DNS resolution process, dig plus trace command will do this DNS resolution, and it would print you the log how this resolution works. So I'm going to run this command. I will show you how it works. Okay, you got the IP address of www.google.com here. Great. How did you get the IP? Is what I'm going to. Okay, fine. So let me run this command, just making sure that. Okay, I ran this command: dig plus trace www.google.com. First, it contacted the dot name server. I told you there are 13 of them. It will request one of these 13. You can see if you count this, these are the name servers of dot. You can see the domain name in the first column. You can see dot here. The name servers of dot. If you see ns here, what it means is the name server of this name server of dot is this, and actually there are 13 of them. Dot has total of 13 name servers. That is what indicated by these 13 root servers. A dot root servers dot net, b dot root server, like that. Right. So now my resolver got 13 root level name server, and it will contact one of these 13 root level name server. For example, in this case, this particular IP a.a.a.8, it is nothing but one of these 13 machines. Oh, sorry. This is the one, 192.33.4.12. This is one of these 13 name server. So what my resolver, okay, I will start from the beginning. I think there is a confusion. First, I have my MacBook here, and I have a resolver name server. And this resolver name server already know the 13 root level name server. So when I ran this command, dig plus trace, first I requested this root level name server, what give me the IP address of www.google.com. What the root name server will do? It will choose one name server out of this 13. So first I will get the 13 name server in the output of dig plus trace command, which is nothing. I got this information from my resolver name server. Next, what this resolver name server will do is it will choose one name server out of 13. In this case, you can see this is nothing but my resolver name server 8.8.8.8 is nothing but my resolver name server. It has this information about 13 root level name servers. Then this resolver name server will choose one name server out of this 13, which is nothing but this name server with this IP 192.33.4.12, which is one of these 13. So it requested for this one of these 13 name server, which has this IP 192.33.4.12. It asks this name server what is the IP address of google.com. Then obviously, like I said, this name server know what are the name servers of com. That's all it know. It know the name servers of com. That's all. So it will respond with the list of name server of com, and these many are there. So this list of com name server, you can see com here, com dot. It's not com. You should actually say com dot. That is the fully qualified domain name. Com dot has these many name servers. Then what your resolver will do? I told you the resolver will choose one of these name server. Actually, in my case, it chose this particular name server 192.33.1.4.30. This is nothing the com name server. I mean, one of these 13. All these are com name server, but it will randomly choose only one. And in this case, it choose 192.33.14.30. It asks this name server what is the IP address of google.com. Then it will tell you, okay, I am a com name server. I don't have the information about the IP address of google.com, but I know what are the name servers of google.com, and these are they. There are 4 authoritative name servers for google.com. All this information is given to you by this name server. That means 192.33.14.3 machine. Now your resolver name server got the authoritative name service of Google. There are 4 of them. You can reach one of these 4 machines. In our case, this is the machine it contacted. It is nothing but IP address of one of these 4 machines, 216.239.36.10. Your resolver name server asks this name server, what is the IP address of www.google.com? And this name server responded saying that, yes, I have this information you are asking for, because there is already some record. Google company already have added some record here pointing www.google.com to the given IP. So that information is given to my resolver name server, and finally I got it. 216. This is the IP of www.google.com. Then what I will do, from my Mac, my browser will connect to the machine which has this particular IP. When it connects to this machine, probably assume Apache is running in this machine. Assume this is your EC2 machine. It can be your EC2 machine. It can be any public machine in the world. Probably a machine sitting in Mumbai. Probably a machine sitting in the US. Any machine that has an IP. Which IP? 216.58.203.68. This is the actual address of this machine. So your MacBook, my MacBook, know the address of this machine. It will reach to this machine. Request for the web page of www.google.com. There would be google.com pages saved inside this machine. It will respond with the pages of google.com. That is when I can see the web pages displayed in my browser. Is it clear?
Basi Lalit here.
Yes, Lalit.
Can you show us that how to configure that resolver name servers to our to our EC2 machine, like our Linux machine?
Okay. In my case, I'm using a Mac. So I am using the name service of my ISV. So those who are using Mac, if you want to find out what are your resolver name server, in my case, this is definitely one of them. You can see I ran this dig plus trace command from my MacBook, and this is the resolver name server that gave me the information about 13 root level name server. So this is the resolver name server I am using in my Mac. So if I want to find out, actually there is a file where it it finds out. I think in Mac, yeah, there is a file called etc resolve.conf. This is the file which contains the list of name servers. If you are using Windows, go to your network settings, go to the adapter settings, double click on TCP IP settings. You can see your name server information, or you can run the command ipconfig/a. Run the command from your CMD prompt if you are using Windows. Run the command ipconfig /a. It would show you what name server you are using. In my case, I have 2 resolver name servers. So whenever I browse for any website from my MacBook, I first contact one of these name server requesting for what is the IP address of the website which I am browsing. This is the first machine. This is the second machine. Right. And if I want, I can set up my own resolver name server. You heard me? If I want, if I don't want to use this name server which were given by Airtel, I got the connection from Airtel, my ISP, and these are the name server I have got from Airtel in my resolve.conf. Actually, the second one is not a name server owned by Airtel, it is a name server owned by Google. Google has a name server which is available. Anyone in the world can use those name server as their resolver name server for free. They are absolutely free. Anybody in the world, if they don't have any resolver name server, Google has set up some for you, right? You can use it for free. You can use this name server as there are many of them. You can search in Google. Free name servers by Google. You can search in Google. There are many of them. Or you can simply search in Google free resolver name server. You will get a list of them. You can use any name server. Or you can set up one name server of your own. Right? You can set up a name server of your own. And this name server will be contacted. You are browsing for any website. First, this name server will be contacted and this IP address is given to you. Let me tell you one more thing. Let's say you have your own, assume you have an office. Inside offices, typically the resolver name servers are set up by your system administrators only inside your office. It could not be a name server given by Airtel. It can be, but generally it is not. So assume you have complete command over the resolver name server. What you can do? Give me 1 minute. Uh, give me 5 minutes. I'll be right back.
Hello. Hello. I can't hear you, Basil.
He's on the break for 5 minutes. He will come back 5 minutes.
Sorry, sir.
Hey, welcome back. So assume in this name server you pointed google.com to a different IP. Or assume your system administrators, they have complete control over this resolver name server. They pointed facebook.com. They do not want people browsing facebook.com. So they pointed facebook.com to a internal website. For example, right, test.hr.com, some internal website that points to the HR software or your company website. You can do. So whenever people who are using this name server, whenever they browse for a website, the request will come. They will ask, when they browse for facebook.com, the machines of the employees will ask this resolver name server, what is the IP address of facebook.com? But unfortunately, in this machine, it's a fake address that your system admin have put. So you got a fake IP address of Flipkart. When you tries to connect to that machine, you are actually being rerouted to a different website. It's possible. So you can actually have your own name server, resolver name server, and you can add your own DNS record, whatever DNS record that you want to add, you can do that. So think about this. You have a number of machines. This is one of your WordPress machine. This is your database machine. Like that, assume there are multiple Linux machines. On this machine, you have set up Apache and WordPress. And on this machine, you have set up MySQL. In the previous example that you did, it was all on the same machine that you have. There was one single EC2 machine where you set up WordPress as well as MySQL. But it's possible you can actually set up WordPress in one machine, MySQL in another machine, then WordPress can connect to the MySQL remotely through a network. It can connect. So sometimes this machine want to communicate each other. The one machine want to contact to the other machine. So what you can actually do is you can actually set up a resolver name server which all your machine in your infrastructure will use. Let's say this is your WordPress machine. The WordPress machine will try to connect to the database machine to a name called db01. And if it want to connect to this machine, it will use the name db02. So you will give a name to each and every machine. This is WordPress 1, this is WordPress 2, this is Tomcat 1, right, db1. So like that, for every machine in your infrastructure you give some meaningful names. So whenever one machine try to connect to the other machine using this name, it's the responsibility of the resolver name server to give the right IP address to you. So let's say you have set up a resolver name server like this. Then you pointed db1 is equal to the actual IP of db1. db2 is equal to the actual IP of db2. So like that, you configure a number of DNS names, and your infrastructure machines, whenever they want to communicate to each other, they will use these names rather than using the IP address. So whenever you want to, let's assume there's a change in the IP, you don't really care. All you need to do is go to the resolver name server which you have control over, and then change the IP address. I think you got it, right? So I will also do this in your next class. What I want you to do is, there's a software called Bind. There's a software called Bind. So what I want you to do is install this Bind software in your EC2 machine. Create a EC2 machine in AWS. Inside that machine, install Bind. Okay. Once you install Bind, do these things. This is the steps I will tell you what you need. Bind is nothing but it would set up a name server on Linux machine. So you have a EC2 machine that you have created. Install Bind in it. Then this machine can act as your resolver name server. Resolver name server, or the configuration wise, both resolver name server and authoritative name server are same. So install Bind in your EC2 machine. Then you can use your EC2 machine as a resolver name server. Okay. Then what I want you to do is add some IP address inside these machines, which I will tell you. First, run this command, which will install bind in your EC2 machine. Yeah, you need to run this command also. Yeah, you can add this also. I mean, modify this file, put a -4 in this line. You need to do that because you need to make sure that you are telling your bind that it's the IPv4 IP that we are going to work on. And then run this command to restart bind. Right? This is a system, basically whatever change that you had done inside this file, it will take place when you run this particular command. Then you run this command to restart bind. Okay, that's it. That's all the installation steps, yeah, that you need to follow. The next step that you want to do is set up only one name server. You don't need to create two machines. In this tutorial, they discuss about creating two machines. In your case, just create only one machine, set up bind in that machine. So it's nothing but your EC2 machine, the Linux machine. Then you will set up install bind in the machine using the above steps which I talked about. The next thing what you need to do is open this particular file, etc bind named .conf .options. Inside this particular file you would see a entry something like this, ACL space trusted. You would see something like this. Over here you put the IP address of your EC2 machine, right? You know the public IP of your EC2 machine. Put the public IP of your EC2 machine here, ending with a semicolon. That's it. No any other line. Remove any all other lines. Just put only one entry, which is nothing but the IP address of your EC2 machine. Basically, you are telling what are the trusted name servers. And again, come down on the same file. On the same file, under options, there is a block called options. Inside this block, add these lines. This is one line, two line, here replace this IP with the, okay, you don't really need to put this line, just don't put this line at all, right? Remove this line. Remaining let it be same. Just do not put this line. All other lines you put as they are, as you can see it here. Copy paste all these entries into this name.conf.options file under this options block. Then now we are going to add record for a given website, for example facebook.com, right? You are going to add a record for facebook.com. So what I want you to do is open this file, etc bind name.local, name.conf.local, add this entry, just copy paste it, replace example.com with flipkart.com. Okay, maybe this entire thing replace it with flipkart.com. This entire thing replace it with flipkart.com. Do not put this line. This line is not required at all. If you want to put, you can put. That's not a concern, right? So basically, through this configuration, what you are telling your name server is that, what you are telling your bind is that, if somebody requests for this particular domain name IP address, those information are written inside this particular file. Get the IP address from this file. That's what you are telling. to your DNS server. Remember, you are setting all these things inside your EC2 machine. You install bind, and inside this particular file name.conf.log local, you are adding this entry. What this entry tells is, if somebody requests for this particular website name, the IP address of that website, everything is written inside this website zone file. This is called the zone file for facebook.com. I will show you how the content of the zone file will look like. This is how it will look. Come down, open this file, etc bind zone. This is nothing but this file that you mentioned here. So open this file, copy paste this entire thing over there, replacing, yeah, IP address, let it be, or maybe you can put the IP address of google.com, or maybe you can put it as it is. Just copy paste it by replacing. No, there is nothing to replace, right? Just copy paste this entire thing into this file, and finally restart bind. That's all you need to do, nothing else, right? And finally restart bind. The command is, you have seen the command in one of the previous step, right? The same command. Use this command to restart bind. That's all. Once you did that, your EC2 machine now will start acting like a name server, the resolver name server, and it can give you the records. So this is you now from your MacBook or from your laptop. You browse for google.com or any website. First the request will go into the resolver name server. First the resolver name server will check the record is already there. So if you request for facebook.com, the resolver name server will find that, okay, facebook.com record is already there. That IP address would be given to you. Then you will try to connect to that IP. Probably that is going to be an invalid IP, so you will not be able to see facebook.com page. So do this. And basically the facebook.com should not work. So how you will change your resolver names? By default in your laptop you are using the name service given by your ISP. Where you will change that settings, I will show you in Windows. Change name service, Windows, right? Search in Google. This is what you need to do. Go to the control panel, click on network and internet, go to the network and sharing center, change adapter settings, select the connection that gives you the internet, then go to the properties tab, and then it would appear, I mean, you would find something called TCP IP, TCP for IP for some settings there. Double click on it, it would open a window. There you would see an option, use this name server, check that box, then give the IP address of your EC2 machine. Basically that's how you will tell your laptop that use this resolver name server, use your the given resolver name server, which is nothing but your EC2 machine, instead of using the ISP name service. So finally when you browse facebook.com from your laptop, it should not work. Or you can run this command, you can run the command dig facebook.com at the rate the IP address of your EC2 machine. Maybe you can run this command from anywhere. You would get whatever IP address that you had added inside this zone file. You added an IP address into this zone file, right? 127.0.0.0.1. The same IP you will get in the output of this particular command if you put. Basically what this command does is it will fetch the DNS record of facebook.com from this machine. So if you put your EC2 machine IP here, then from the EC2 machine it will try to fetch the record of facebook.com, the IP address of facebook.com. So this command you can run from anywhere in your Linux machine, in your EC2 machine itself. You can run this command. In the output of this command, you must get the IP, whatever IP address that you had given for facebook.com. So work it out. I would also discuss this in our next class, how to do that, right? And tomorrow and day after you do not have classes. That means Monday and Tuesday you do not have classes. The next class is going to be on Wednesday, right? Same time it would be. So I want you to finish setting up the DNS server yourself, or you can even search in Google how to set up bind in AWS EC2 machine. It's not a good example. You can simply search how to set up a bind in Ubuntu 16.4. Maybe this is the best choice, right? Search in Google. You will get many tutorials that describe how you can set up your own resolver name server. Also tomorrow or day after, just send me a plan, right? How you are going to do it. Just send me a plan in my email. Don't stop, I mean, continue working on your plan. Don't need to wait for my email response. Continue working on it, but if I want you to send me a plan tomorrow, so that then you can start.
What is the plan?
I mean, what you are going to do to achieve this.
What I need to achieve?
The facebook.com, when you browse from your laptop, you must get whatever IP address that you had configured inside your EC2 machine.
Okay.
You got the question right, everyone? Any confusion?
Once again.
Mm-hmm. You want me to explain once again? I didn't hear you, Manoj.
Just tell me the question once again.
You want the question once again? Okay. So now you know that every laptop has a resolver name server. This is your laptop, and this is your resolver name server, and typically this is given by your ISP. What I want you to do is, your laptop will not use your ISP name server. It will use your EC2 machine as the name server. This is your Windows laptop. Your laptop, whenever you browse for any website, first the request will go to the resolver name server, and it is getting the IP address from the resolver name server. This time you set up bind inside your EC2 machine. Bind is a software which will turn your EC2 machine into a resolver name server. And inside your laptop, under your control panel network settings, you need to change your resolver name server and point your laptop to this resolver name server. Once you did that, now when you browse for any website, first your request will come to this name server. It will ask the IP address of google.com to this name server, and this name server will respond with the IP address of google.com. So what if you have added a record inside this name server under the bind settings to point facebook.com to an IP 127.0.0.1? In that case, you already added this name record. After installing bind, you already pointed facebook.com to this IP, which I already told you how. You can watch the videos how to do that, right? Then if I request for facebook.com IP address, the name server will always respond with whatever IP address it has. It will not try to connect to the authoritative name server of facebook.com because there is no need. It already has facebook.com record in it. So in that case, it will not query the authoritative name server for the IP address of facebook.com. So basically, when you browse for facebook.com, you won't get any page in your laptop. So
Basically, this simply can be done editing the host file also, right?
no host file. Do not use any
I mean,
host.
you want us to go through
Yeah,
the
we
file
can do.
setting?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Probably the same thing you may have
Yeah.
done using host file. Do it using DNS.
Yeah. Understood. Understood the question.
Got it, right?
Yeah.
Anybody has any doubts or questions, you can just email me or tomorrow send me the steps that you're going to do. I mean, just a high level description, what you understood the question and what plan, I mean, what are the steps that you're going to execute to get it done, right? Send me a stepwise, uh, right? Do it tomorrow. And we do not have classes tomorrow and day after, so continue working on this. It could be little difficult, but not very difficult. If you understood the concept, then probably there could be some syntax error or right many small thing that you need to fix, but do work it out. Okay. Any questions?
So can we leave the meeting?
Yeah, go ahead. You can leave the meeting, and yeah, see you on Wednesday. Our next class is on Wednesday.